Number 10. Steel Corpse. Steel Corpse is definitely one of the most horrifying alternate versions of Tony Stark. He hails from the Age of X reality, that of Earth 11326. Here, Tony Stark ends up becoming infected with a virus that permanently merges him with his suit, causing him to slowly be devoured by it as time wears on. Still, despite the fact that the suit also possesses its own directives and was slowly overpowering Tony's own will, Tony managed to hold on long enough to ask that Cap take care of him when, against his own intentions at the time, his suit started targeting mutant children. Captain America did as Tony asked, killing him to ensure the mutant's safety and allowing Steel Corpse to die a hero. I mean, what more can you ask for if you're Tony Stark? As long as you go out glory blazing, you know what I mean? Glory blazing is not a thing anyone says. Don't say that. Number 9. Bullet Points Iron Man. Bullet Points Iron Man is actually Steven Rogers in the reality of Earth 70105. Here, Captain America never became, well, Captain America. Dr. Erskine was killed before the Super Soldier Project was completed, causing the government to turn to their backup plan, Project Iron Man. Steve volunteered for the plan, which saw him surgically grafted into an old school and, in this reality, I guess, original Iron Man suit. It wasn't old school at the time, but retroactive to now would be considered old school. Does that make sense? Instead of becoming a super soldier, Steve Rogers fought in World War II as Iron Man. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, we have a new channel coming your way. What? It is called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and it is for the most elite of the Nerd Squad members. So get on over there, hit that subscribe, and check it out for all of the glorious nerd bonus content. We're gonna have so many cool, exciting things coming up on there. I'm so excited. Number 8. Iron Man Noir. Iron Man Noir is the alternate version of Tony Stark who hails from Earth 90214, Marvel's Noirverse. In this reality, Tony Stark is still a genius and an inventor who even back in the 1930s managed to make himself an impressive suit of Iron Man armor. Here, Tony is also an errant wanderer who enjoys going on expeditions and adventures to hunt down lost artifacts. Along the way, he makes some powerful allies and learns dark truths about his family.
Number 7. Ultimate Universe Iron Man. Having your mind and body altered by an Infinity Gem sounds like it could go anywhere, but fittingly for Tony Stark, it led to him being able to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. And that's a pretty good ability for someone who flies around in a technological suit of armor. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine. Kinda like Cyborg, but not really. Being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be nigh unkillable, proven when the Master, aka Reed Richards, of this universe seemingly brought his demise, but he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual abilities, plus force fields and cloaking, but he's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suits, as well as open locks, defuse little boom booms, and interact with all forms of technology before he gets infused with an Infinity Gem and becomes super cool. Number 6. Iron Hammer. The Iron Man from the 2018 comic book event Infinity Warps blended the characters of Iron Man and Thor to make for one of the most powerful versions of Tony Stark ever. For some backstory, this warp world was created when Gamora gained the power of the Infinity Stones, and she used them to fold the universe in half, merging souls together, creating amalgamated heroes like Stark Odinson. This awesome version of Iron Man and Thor enjoys virtual immortality thanks to his Asgardian physiology, along with superhuman strength and endurance. His hammer, Mjolnir Iron, I know, stupid name, just go with it, has all the same powers as the regular Mjolnir, but it also grants Stark his armor, which is now a mystical suit of Asgardian armor that does all the same cool things. Since both Thor and Tony kind of had daddy issues, this version of the mix also has their father, Howard Odin, playing a big part in the story too. It's just really awesome. Okay. Number 5. Iron Maniac. Coming at us from the alternate Earth of 5012, the Iron Maniac shows readers what a totally evil version of Tony Stark would look like, other than the Exiles version. That one's also really evil. This Tony Stark from this war-torn version of the Marvel Universe has done some truly horrible things following the loss of so many of his fellow heroes at the hands of a villain named Titanus. Using a really cool armor that also somewhat resembles Doctor Doom's armor, the Iron Maniac went against the Fantastic Four and even took the life of Johnny Blaze in his native universe. His advanced armor repels some magical attacks as well as generates a neural dampening field that mitigates telepathic and telekinetic attacks to some degree, which really helped him out to be absolutely terrible. Reed Richards of Earth 5012 eventually found a way to send this Tony Stark to the 616 universe, where he faced the 616 Fantastic Four and eventually the New Avengers, showing just how powerful this evil Iron Man actually is, and making us thank our stars that normal Tony Stark is a good guy. Number 4. Iron Lantern. The Amalgam Universe combined the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel Comics, during a time of utmost peace and prosperity. Just kidding, this was in the 90s. This crazy event pitted popular characters from both sides against each other and even fused some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, HAL for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own to a crashed alien spaceship, and it crashed itself yards away. The crash left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which after meeting the dying alien, Roman Sur, Stark survived using an alien battery that suspiciously was in the shape of a lantern to build a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive though, it gave him the ability to create green, solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel, and it granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers. He also had translation of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever classic superhuman strength and durability. Yeah, he'll put his hand on your chest, like this. He'll go, stop. And then he'll fire a little repulsor beam out. Number 3. Iron Man and Doctor Strange. So it turns out that Tony Stark is a good fit to become the Sorcerer Supreme, and honestly, when you think about the intelligence of the guy, it makes a decent amount of sense. In What If issue number 113 from 1998, Tony Stark and Stephen Strange meet at a party, and after leaving together, Tony is the one driving when they get into the car crash that would normally ruin Strange's hands. Where in the normal continuity, Stephen has to deal with his hands relatively alone, in this What If, it leads Tony on a journey fueled by guilt to try and repair Strange's hands. Eventually, it leads him to the Ancient One, which in turn leads to him becoming the master of the mystic arts, learning how to infuse his tech and armor with magic to create a much more capable hero. As for Stephen though, he becomes almost like Baron Mordo and betrays Stark to Dormammu. Luckily, this is in the list of better Stephen Strange alternates. Number 2. All New X-Men Annual number 1. But just to hammer home the idea that Stark would make a great Sorcerer Supreme, we actually have more than one alternate reality where this takes place. The second one I want to talk about today would be in All New X-Men Annual number 1 from 2014. This story showed us Iron Man from the temporary reality number of 591. Tony in this reality brought together the Avengers to permanently end the threat of Thanos on the universe, which resulted in the alien races of said universe rewarding the Earth and its heroes with advanced alien technology, turning the Earth into a utopia. Tony himself would start to lean more into his mystical side with all the extra time he had after saving the universe, eventually becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and being able to solve further conflicts without needing any kind of real fighting. Now last I've seen, this Tony was living youthfully comfortable at 126 years old. There are even more versions of Sorcerer Tonys out in the multiverse, but you can go find them yourself, because I'm done. After this number 1 point, Robert Downey Jr. Look, we can talk about magical Iron Mans all day, but nothing can really stand up to the closest thing we got to a real Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark was the whole groundwork for the MCU, and his character endured for years. Taking aspects of the original character and adding some realism and a really likable performance made for a version of Iron Man that boosted up not only the comic book character's popularity, but through the MCU, it boosted up the popularity of comic books in general, and for us here at Top 10 Nerd, that is quite a statement. Being in a world that is a bit more grounded and relatable to our own, this Iron Man doesn't have as complex of a story, nor is he more powerful as his comic book counterpart, but he is more than impressive enough without that. Not to mention, he was the one to actually defeat Thanos in the end. His send-off from the MCU affected people who don't even read comic books, and I think that says a lot. Number 10. Lord Iron. I will never turn up the chance to talk about Marvel 1602, otherwise known as Earth 311. This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and plops them in the Elizabethan era. And yes, that includes Iron Man. Going by the name Anthony Stark and Lord Iron, his armor is powered by quote-unquote lightning bottles, and was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars, and treated rather harshly by the Hulk, resulting in the requirement of the suit to survive. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now look, this suit in comparison to other versions of Iron Man, it's not the most advanced and powerful suit, but when looked at with the scope of the technology at the time, it's centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with base Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Like, damn bro, it's nice.
Number 9. Original Tony. Technically I'm talking about a version of 616 Tony here, but this isn't even really like the 616 Tony. Not the one we have now anyways, although at one point this was the 616 Tony. This version of Tony ended up getting amalgamated with his younger self to give us the version that we have now, because this version ended up fighting his younger self. Yep, it all happened as part of the Crossing event. Ah yes, the Crossing event, what a marvelous time. During that event it was revealed that Tony was actually a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka an alternate name and persona of Kang the Conqueror. He is activated and ends up becoming somewhat unstoppable when it comes to the Avengers' power to defeat him, and Kang. Instead they enlist the help of a younger Tony Stark from the past, who actually almost dies fighting against his older self. In the end however, Tony has a change of heart, and he basically sacrifices himself to save his friends and the world from Kang. However, as I said, this version of him would later be resurrected and then amalgamated with the younger Tony, who remained in 616 in his place. Together they would give us the Tony Stark that we know and love today in the comics.
Number 8. Exiles. Tony Stark, the undisputed monarch of Earth. What? Take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Anthony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality. That's a man who can bring the world to its knees, but has the sense to not let them know it, and then be begged to take charge. Tony Stark of Earth 42777 acquired every world conglomerate. He organized a mutant war against humanity and then defeated their leader, Magneto, created a worldwide famine the likes of which was never seen before, and then invented the cures and vaccines to fix it, and then he got elected president. He developed weather controlling technologies to create biblical level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up control. Central America and Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into the fold too, and he made a deal with Dr. Doom, who had attacked the Capitol and then taken out all the other democratic leaders in America, who he also destroyed after receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured just like Emperor Palpatine. He's de-lifed the Hulk. This version of Tony Stark is ruthless and powerful.
Number 7. Younger Tony. A weird fact is that for a while in the main continuity, an alternate version of Tony Stark was actually the main version, while at the same time still remaining an alternate. Are you confused yet? Kind of like how Miles Morales is both Spider-Man in the 616 continuity, but also an alternate Spider-Man from outside of that continuity. Even though I know what you're all thinking, well, Miles Morales isn't like the main Spider-Man. Whatever, he's a main Spider-Man in my heart. And that's why this is a little bit different, because this version of Tony Stark actually took his predecessor's place. For a time, anyways. What happened was older Tony Stark, the original version, had been revealed to be a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka Kang the Conqueror. As a result, the Avengers brought back a younger version of Stark to help in defeating the hero turned villain. Unfortunately, that didn't work out great, and younger Tony Stark almost got himself killed. However, in the end, older Tony saw the error of his ways and sacrificed himself, passing the torch on to younger Tony of Earth 96020, plucked from earlier on in Tony's own timeline. This younger version of Tony would stick around on Earth 616, helping to defeat Stockpile, Frostbite, Zodiac, and eventually even Onslaught. After his seeming death at the hands of Onslaught, young Franklin Richards brought back all of the heroes who had fallen, including younger Tony and actually the older Tony from before, merging the two together. So younger Tony really is both an alternate and at the same time is part of Prime Tony Stark. Younger Tony, while powerful now as part of the 616 Tony Stark, initially mainly fought without full armor, instead often only coming armed with his chest plate and gauntlets, which is why he ranks so low on this list. But he's still powerful, he's still part of Prime Tony. so we gotta count that. Number 6. Agent Venom. For a very brief moment, Flash Thompson got to experience what it was like to be Iron Man when he donned an Iron Man suit in order to get in closer to Venom, which itself was bonded with Superior Spider-Man, making him lose control and turn violent. I don't know if we'd exactly consider him a true alternate, as I believe his time donning the armor was quite brief, unless there's something that I've missed here, but it's still a cool moment in a pretty cool story, and so for that reason, we're gonna count it today. Fortunately, through using the Iron Man armor, Flash was able to get up close and personal and lure the symbiote back to himself, once more becoming Agent Venom. It was also during this adventure that Flash was also made an honorary Avengers team member. Pretty neat. Number 5. Superior Iron Woman, aka Rescue. Rescue is Pepper Potts, Virginia Pepper Potts, and the editorial name used for her was Superior Iron Woman. I just felt that name was more in theme with what we have going on this list, and we already have Agent Venom on here, who sadly did not really have a cool Iron Man related name during his brief time in the armor, so I was like, ugh, I want to try to keep it as Iron Man-y as I can. Pepper became Rescue after Norman Osborn took control, leading the SHIELD replacement organization Hammer. During her escape, Pepper found a suit designed just for her, which also happened to have an AI version of Jarvis inside. She not only has her own suit of highly advanced armor, but she also has the repulsor tech node, which helps to keep her alive after she also had irremovable shrapnel lodged near her heart. But the RT node also acts as an extra sense, allowing her to feel and interact with various types of energy. It also enhances Pepper's senses and grants her increased strength and overall durability. Number 4. Zombie Iron Man. Well, you might think it would be hard to turn Tony Stark into a zombie because of, you know, his Iron Man suit always protecting him. You'd actually be wrong. It was before he could get his suit on that he was bitten while working on a teleportation device thought of as a way to save the survivors on their world and basically shut out the zombies. Which makes sense after all. I mean, you want to be light and breezy and not covered in armor when you're brainstorming up a plan and working on tech that, you know, could save humanity. So I get it. Zombie Iron Man, however, would go on to become one of the longest surviving and most powerful zombies in the Earth-Z universe, gaining the power Cosmic after devouring Galactus and becoming known as one of the Zombie Galacti. In the end, however, Zombie Iron Man proved no match for a raging and hungry Zombie Hulk. RIP, Zombie Iron Man. Number 3. Iron Man's suit. In the 1998 Iron Man series Volume 3, we get a story where Iron Man's suit becomes its own version of Iron Man after Tony develops a sentient model. Not a great idea, it turns out. This now sentient suit kind of falls in love with Tony and wants to merge with him. Despite all the warning signs, Stark attempts to continue to use the suit for a bit, but eventually realizes it needs to be defeated. When he refuses to merge with the Iron Man suit, it decides if it can't have him, no one can, and attempts to kill Tony for refusing it. However, in the end, the two duke it out and Tony suffers a heart attack. Due to its love for Tony, the suit sacrifices its own mechanical heart for its creator, giving up its life so that Tony Stark can go on living. The whole thing is pretty weird, but also pretty great. And if not for the heart attack, I'm not so sure how Tony would have actually fared in the end against his sentient suit, because it was pretty powerful. I also love the part where he's suffering from the heart attack and he's like begging the suit to kill him so that he doesn't die like an old man. I kid you not, that is the thing that happens. If you want to check out the sentient suit story and Tony begging to be killed because he's like, I can't die from a heart attack, feel free to give issues 26 through 30 of the 1998 series a read. Number 2. Iron Man 2020. I know what you're thinking if you've watched part 1 of this list, but Amanda, wait a minute, didn't we already talk about Iron Man 2020? And you're right, of course, we did talk about Iron Man 2020, but we did not talk about this Iron Man 2020. This version of Arno Stark hails from the Earth 8410, the future. You can tell it's the future because of those sweet gear shoulders on his armor. Just look at those gears, just check that out. This version of Arno Stark is also a genius who is great at inventing things and is meant to be the descendant or semi-close relative of Tony Stark, but not his brother, more like a future relative. A few times he refers to Tony as his Uncle Tony, though seemingly in a more distant sense. It has been mentioned that Tony Stark was his great uncle, though this was before Tony's brother Arno had been established in the comics, so who knows how he's really related. Or if he's related at all, maybe it's all a ruse. Number 1. Ironheart. Ironheart is Riri Williams. Last time on part 1 we talked about another alternate Iron Man from the main continuity who took up the mantle in Tony's honor, and Riri Williams as Ironheart is another hero who also did so, and around the same time too. She caught the attention of Tony Stark and became a sort of young protege and ally of his, after she built her own Iron Man suit by reverse engineering it. She had taken the suit out on a test flight and managed to apprehend escaped prisoners using it, but damaging it as well in the process. When Tony heard of this, he visited Riri and encouraged her interest in becoming a hero. Riri would then ally herself with Tony Stark during the events of the Second Civil War and also be one of the heroes to take his place after he ended up in a coma following his fight against Captain Marvel. Like Iron Man, Ironheart is also a super genius who has managed to invent and create some really impressive tech, sometimes even without access to the best equipment. Number 10. What If Sorcerer Supreme? In the What If series, we got an issue that explored the idea of what would happen if Tony Stark became Sorcerer Supreme in place of Stephen Strange, and was forced to do battle with the Dread Lord of the Dark Dimension, Dormammu. Oddly enough, this isn't the only alternate future where Tony ends up as Sorcerer Supreme, maybe we'll talk about that later. It's actually just one of them. Here both Stark and Strange are in a car accident together, which robs Stephen of his ability to use his hands as a surgeon. Tony swears to fix Stephen's hands and the two set out on a quest, which sets Stark down a path to meeting and training with the Ancient One, instead of Stephen doing that. After becoming the Ancient One's disciple and defeating the evil Baron Mordo, Stark becomes the new Sorcerer Supreme and is forced to do battle with Dormammu, who plans on, of course, invading Earth. Stark makes for himself a suit of armor to help him defeat Dormammu, which combines both Tony's knowledge of technology and the mystic arts. Number 9. Iron Man 2020. Iron Man 2020 is both an event and a character. The editorial name was given to a different Iron Man, Arno Stark. Arno Stark, aka Iron Man 2020, was Tony's secret brother and the natural-born heir of the Stark family, whereas it was later revealed that Tony was actually adopted to kind of help cover up what had really happened with Arno and to basically protect the firstborn Stark. Arno would end up taking up the mantle of Iron Man in the future year of 2020, although now that would actually be the past because it's 2022 at the time of this recording, and at the time of the event it was the present because it was 2020. The original Iron Man 2020 comic was actually published in the 90s, so at the time 2020 was very much in the future. So for those of you trying to tell me 2020 is the past, I know, but at the time, it's the future. In the event Iron Man 2020, Arno takes up his brother's mantle as he fights against the uprising of machines. Tony at the time felt he was more machine than man, and Arno basically uses this revelation of Tony's to discredit him, taking his place and becoming Iron Man in his stead. In the end, Arno would basically be driven mad while trying to save humans from machines by attempting to take control of all life, both organic and AI, in order to protect them. Don't worry though, because Tony would defeat Arno and kind of put him in a dream state to make him hopefully be happy until he wakes up and realizes all of the things he thinks he's been living have been a lie, which will probably not be good. I don't think that's happened yet though. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you are enjoying our content here, why not head on over to Facebook and follow us there. We have lots of bonus content coming your way, giveaways and other good stuff, so go on over there and click that follow button. Number 8. Darkhold Iron Man. The Darkhold Iron Man tale gives us a glimpse into a dark alternate future for our hero. In this reality, when Tony Stark first makes the Iron Man suit, something in his programming basically goes wrong. This causes the suit to remove Tony's skin when it is put on and then removed. Tony learns this the hard way. While working on the suit to try and fix this issue, he feels a compulsion to put it on as though the suit is calling to him. And seemingly, without thinking, he finds himself doing so, eventually even putting on the helmet. The Iron Man suit works to remove Tony's skin and then eventually breaks down his skull and his bones, merging with him fully so that the suit can never actually be removed without killing Tony, because now they're kind of one being. But why would he ever want to remove this suit? Driven insane, in the end Tony Stark believes that the Iron Man suit is actually the way of the future and offers one to every human, turning the population into a bunch of techno-organic iron suit human hybrid monster things permanently, including his friends and his loved ones who he also forces into suits. Ugh. Which would be really terrible because they know what's gonna happen. At least those people are unsuspecting and they're just like, ah, free iron suit, that sounds lovely. Let me run into this and see what happens. better or worse? If you see it coming, or if you're surprised by it? I don't know. I feel like if you see it coming, it's worse in my mind. Number 7. Superior Iron Man. Superior Iron Man is actually a version of Tony from the main continuity, but he's so devious and fantastic that I had to include him. What can I say? I'm obviously a sucker for an evil villain version of Tony Stark, as this is the second one that I've mentioned on this list. I just feel like Tony has so much potential as an amazing villain, and honestly, I would rather see him as a villain than a hero. I know that might be a hot take, but there it is. And you might even say he's not just an amazing villain, he's a superior villain. Ho! Superior Iron Man came about as a result of Iron Man avoiding the re-reversal of alignments back to normal near the end of Axis. You see, Scarlet Witch had cast a spell which accidentally inverted the alignment of a good number of Marvel's premium heroes and villains. Well, she meant to invert them, but not all of them. She meant to invert one of them, and then everyone else got affected too. Oops. Among them was Tony. When this was reversed, so Tony would go back from being evil to good once more, the super smart Iron Man found a way to shield himself, resisting the reversal back to being a hero. Instead, he remained a villain who simply passed himself off as a hero. This version of Tony isn't just smart, he's diabolical, and his lack of ethics means he's willing to do things that his regular, more heroic 616 self wouldn't.
Number 6. Ultimate Universe. Having your mind and body altered by an Infinity Gem sounds like it could go pretty much anywhere, but fittingly for Tony Stark, it led to him being able to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. That's a pretty good ability for someone who flies around in a technological suit of armor. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be nigh unkillable. Proven when the Master, Reed Richards, seemingly brought his demise, but he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual abilities, plus force fields and cloaking. He's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suits, as well as open locks, defuse boom booms, and interact with all forms of tech. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man, like quite a few of the other Ultimate Universe characters, is pretty ultimate.
Number 5. Darkhold Iron Man. As we glimpse into the Darkhold, we get to see into the much darker reality of Earth 21129 when it comes to Tony Stark's tale. Here in Darkhold Iron Man, issue number 1, we meet Tony Stark, who becomes obsessed with the armor that he's building, despite the fact that once in said pieces of armor, they cannot be removed, as they bond to Tony in such a way that removing the armor also removes his skin. In essence, we learn that the armor is kinda like feeding on Tony Stark's organic makeup, fully bonding with him. When he wears the helmet, this becomes evident when we learn that skin and bone are melting away, as the suit has, well, no need of them, because they're like, hey, we're armor, so you don't need that. This Tony Stark is eerily powerful as he threatens to take over the world with his technology, offering everyone the infinite and permanent safety of his suits, at the cost of their own organic lives and bodies.
Number 4. Iron Goblin. Earth 19919, or the Spider Island, basically saw the city of New York taken over by the Spider Queen, who infected millions of people, including heroes, turning them into monstrous spider people. Agent Venom of the Resistance began using other monster transforming techniques. This includes injecting the Hulk with the Lizard Serum, using the Godstone to turn Captain America into a werewolf, and Captain Marvel was turned into a living vampire. For Iron Man, he was sprayed with the Goblin formula used by Norman Osborn to save him. This gave Tony Stark super strength, speed, stamina, durability, agility, reflexes, and a regenerative healing factor. You know, the superhero starter pack of abilities. Plus all the technology of the Iron Man suit. Unfortunately, the serum also has the side effect of making people maniacal, paranoid, irrational, and illogical. Not wanting to go fully insane and to make up for his crimes as an arms dealer, the Goblin Iron Man wielded the Ebony Blade, one of the most powerful weapons in the Marvel Universe, and sacrificed himself to save the Resistance.
Number 3. Iron Hammer. Iron Hammer is an amalgamation of Iron Man and Thor from the Pocket Dimension universe known as Warp World. Warp World was created when Gamora gained the power of the Infinity Stones and used them to fold the universe in half, merging souls together in doing so to create amalgamated heroes and villains, then feeding those souls to the Soul Gem. Iron Hammer is Stark Odinson, the son of Howard Odin, who is part businessman, part Asgardian god. Iron Hammer wields a hammer and also wears a spiffy set of armor. armor, having the powers of both the 616 versions of both of these heroes.
Number 2. Iron Lantern. Ah, yes, the Amalgam Universe, combining the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel, pitting popular characters from both sides against each other and even fusing some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, HAL for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own to a crashed alien spaceship, and it too crashed. The crash left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which, after meeting the dying alien Roman Sur, Stark survived using an alien battery, suspiciously in the shape of a lantern, to build a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive though, it gave him the ability to create green solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel, it granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers, translation of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever classic superhuman strength and durability. Yeah, he'll put his hand on your chest.
Number 1. Infamous Iron Man. Who is Infamous Iron Man? Well, he's Dr. Doom as Iron Man. I know this might seem like a controversial pick for our top spot, but walk with me, or I guess just stand with me, because I can't really walk anywhere. Dr. Doom, despite being a villain, is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. He's not only a genius, but is the ruler of a nation known as Latveria, wielding all the power of his country, his people, and the nation's resources, as well as being an extremely gifted magic user. In fact, there are even futures where Doom becomes Sorcerer Supreme, and if it weren't for Clea showing up in the 616 universe, he would have become Sorcerer Supreme after Doctor Strange died. Also, a lot of what stops Dr. Doom from winning the day is his role as a heel for the heroes, a villain. So when he decided to take up the mantle of Iron Man in Tony's absence, he became pretty much unstoppable, because now there's no reason for him to technically have to lose battles. He's not a bad guy. Well, he's kind of a bad guy, but he's a good bad guy. Villains even banded together in fear of what action Doom might take against them as Iron Man. And when they did band together, he still showed up and then beat them all. So yeah.
Kicking off the list today at number 10 is Lord Iron. Kicking off the list with Marvel 1602, otherwise known as Earth 311. This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and plops them in the Elizabethan era, and yes, that includes Iron Man. Going by the name Anthony Stark, aka Lord Iron, his armor is powered by quote-unquote lightning bottles, and was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars and treated rather harshly by the Hulk, resulting in the requirement of the suit just to survive. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now, look, this suit in comparison to other versions of Iron Man is not the most advanced and powerful suit, and you'd expect that from the time period. But when looked at with the scope of the technology at the time, it's centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with the base Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Number 9. Iron Man 2099. In the dark, ultra-capitalist dystopian society of Marvel 2099, Tony Stark is physically long gone. Instead, it's a guy by the name of Sonny Frisco who takes on the mantle of Iron Man. The technology behind Sonny's advanced suit of armor is a full century ahead of Tony Stark's tech, but despite that, the basic range of powers and abilities are curiously the same. Iron Man 2099 flies around at supersonic speeds and generates powerful energy blasts. Plus, he has a metric butt-ton of firepower and gadgets. What I think makes Sonny Frisco better is that the character actually has an advanced intellect comparable to Tony Stark's, or even better with the knowledge of this future world. Sonny built the suit of armor himself, as any Iron Man worth his salt should, and he earned his place on the Avengers team of 2099 in the process. If you guys have your own favorite alternate Iron Man variants that don't make this list, or you just have ideas for future videos, don't be shy and make sure to drop them down in the comments below. We love to hear from you guys whenever we can. But moving on to number 8, Exiles. Tony Stark, the undisputed monarch of Earth. What? Yes. You take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Anthony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality, and that's a man who can bring the world to its knees. But he also has the sense to not let them know it, and then be begged to take charge. Tony Stark of Earth 42777 acquired every world conglomerate, he organized a mutant war against humanity, and then defeated their leader, Magneto. He created a worldwide famine, the likes of which was never seen before, and then he invented the cures and vaccines to fix it. He then got elected president. He developed weather controlling technologies to create biblical level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up their own control. Central America and Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into the fold as well, and he made a deal with Dr. Doom, who had attacked the Capitol and taken out all the other Democratic leaders in America. And then he destroyed Doom after receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured, just like Emperor Palpatine. He's de-lifed the Hulk. This version of Tony Stark is ruthless and powerful, and that is why he's on this list.
Number 7. Iron Man Noir. Coming from the Noir series, Iron Man of Earth 90214 had to go all the way to Atlantis to fix his heart problem. What am I talking about? Let's find out. Tony in this reality was an industrialist adventurer. It feels like National Treasure almost. We meet Tony and the crew and they're looking for something called the Jade Mask. This mask that was said to cure any kind of ailment, so he figured, hey, it's worth a shot to fix the old ticker. It didn't work, so some traitors then revealed themselves once the mask was found, so Tony and Rhodey escaped and returned to New York. He goes on yet another treasure hunt with Rhodey, this time to Atlantis, because he heard a rumor that this power source could also do wonders to his heart, maybe, perhaps. Tony gets the trident and again, he gets betrayed. Zemo and his forces were strong enough to kidnap Pepper, and Tony and Rhodes need a new plan. They travel to Zemo's castle, and it's then that it's revealed that Zemo is actually Tony's father, brainwashed by Strucker. And he was also equipped with Iron Man suits because action and adventure. As far as noir storylines go, Iron Man isn't my favorite, but the whole Nathan Drake vibe that Tony has is still quite fun. And also, Atlantis. It's kind of weird. Dive in. Number 6. Earth X. Also known as Earth 9997, this version of Iron Man hit the pages back in Earth X issue 0. This time around, the human race is at risk due to the release of Terrigen mists. So Tony decides, you know what, I'm just going to isolate myself, not being sure how the mist would react, which is a fair point. So in turn, he would wear his armor all the time, then eventually he made an Iron Manor in New York. Super cautious, you know, with today's stuff going on, you can't really blame him. He went even further when he decided it was best to create his own team, the Iron Avengers. Guy was super paranoid. So eventually Galactus did come along, so Tony used his Iron Manor and distracted the Celestials beforehand. Now during this, Tony lost his life. Some wreckage impaled him, and for the first time in a while, Tony was able to breathe open air. How, you ask? Well, he died, and his soul immediately went to the realm of the dead, and that's when Captain Marvel's soul recruited him for an army set to take on death. Which is, first of all, nuts, because even after you die in Marvel Comics, you can't just chill out in heaven. You have to like go fight another war immediately. Like, come on. But Death did eventually die, and that's when Tony got another huge upgrade in Paradise. Using the High Evolutionary's devices, Tony was changed into this angelic being, of course, still with wings. And he looked like Iron Man, so that's fun. You can customize your own angel outfit once you get up there. That's good to know. Number 5. Tony Doom. Since What If is currently dropping weekly episodes on Disney+, we have to mention one of the more wild issues. What if Tony Stark had become Dr. Doom? It would probably be pretty bad. Yeah, yes it is. So here in the storyline that both of them go to the same college instead of Reed Richards being Victor's roommate. So now it's Tony. Two geniuses in one dorm. Sounds like they would make dreams come true, but in reality it was a living nightmare waiting to happen. Doom tricked Tony into switching bodies Freaky Friday style. And on top of that, Tony's memories were also wiped. So Tony, in Doom's body, gets in heat for the experiment, and in turn, he gets sent back to Latveria. Meanwhile, Doom is in line to take over Stark Industries. He still is Tony Stark, so down the road, Doom Industries was now a competitor to Stark Industries. He's brilliant in any way. The pair end up creating their own armors. Of course, Tony builds a red and gold Doom armor, while Doom makes a green and gray Iron Man armor. I'll give you a second to absorb that. There we go. It's a fun little swap with good action, but it's a little bit too confusing of a Freaky Friday type plot. But it's worth a shot. Go give it a try. Number 4. Dead Man Walking. We look now over to Fantastic Four: The End, released in 2007. Most of Tony's story here was the same, but during the Mutant Wars, Tony lost his life. Now he didn't get redirected to a paradise where he would then become an Iron Man themed angel. Instead, he uploaded his subconsciousness into an AI. So now he lives through his armors, just swapping back and forth, walking around, which sounds like a solution, I guess, but living forever? Come on, Tony, I don't think that's a way to go, really. Number 3. Steel Corpse. Tony and his suit have always been so close. It's had its back many times, sometimes even acting for itself and making a judgment call. Like in Iron Man 3, it literally woke Tony up from a nightmare aggressively. We love that future tech. But in the Age of X storyline, the suit literally has his back as Tony and the suit begin to merge. Ugh, I'm itchy just reading this. This started right after a virus began taking its toll on Tony. He was rapidly declining health-wise, so we chose a more fitting name, Steel Corpse, to be kind of funny, but also he looks like a corpse. So he's like, I'm just gonna admit it. He, alongside other much healthier Avengers, were tasked to take down mutants, but when the gang got there, they of course opted to save them instead. Superhero twist of logic, we love it. Only Tony's advanced suit wasn't exactly on board with his new plan, and it started to act out by itself. It still wanted to save the day, although this was not the right way to do it. Captain America had no choice but to end the life of Steel Corpse in order to save the mutants. Number 2. Iron Goblin. Making his first appearance in the Spider Island series, Iron Goblin wasn't made through any reality warping or anything like that. Instead, this happens during the Resistance assault on Spider-Queen, which is sounding crazier than what I just said. Tony Stark ends up getting captured and infected with the spider virus. He's going nuts at this point, so the rest of the heroes try and snap him out of it by using Goblin Formula, which is a solution, I guess. I don't know, read a book, read a comic book, Avengers. Something bad's gonna happen. So he went from being a spider monster to Iron Goblin. Pretty crazy 24 hours for Tony. Tony was still Tony after this point though, despite the evil green look on his face. Like he even said Norman stole his armor before, so he was just evening it out. Haha, he's funny, he's still Tony, nice. But as time went by, every minute that passed, that formula started to in fact change Tony. Like for example, he was flying around on the glider, although he can fly with his suit. It's not looking good. He knew he was going insane, so he sacrificed himself when the Queen's army attacked. Still a hero nonetheless, although he's mean and green and throwing pumpkin bombs. And finally, number 1, Iron Hammer. Coming from Warp World, Iron Hammer, aka Stark Odinson, first came to life in issue 3 of Infinity Wars. So when Gamora had the Infinity Stones, she trapped everybody's soul in the Soul Gem, and then folded the universe in half, which resulted in all of our heroes merging together. Pretty fun. So rightfully referred to as Warp World, we soon get to meet Soldier Supreme, Ghost Panther, Weapon Hex, and Iron Hammer. Stark Odinson in this pocket universe is the son of course of Howard Odin, chieftain of Asgard. He has the Iron Hammer armor, and of course he has a massive literal hammer of the gods to get the message across. Being a combination of both, he can face powerful villains like Stane Odinson, who is a blend of Loki and Obadiah Stane, and even Madam Hell, one of the coolest looking versions definitely, and also one of the more powerful. A great note to end on. Kicking up the list at number 10, Anthony the Vampire. Making his first appearance in Ultimate Avengers issue 14, Anthony was the greatest vampire hunter who ever walked this earth. He trained Daredevil, Blade, and Edward Cullen. Okay, the last one I lied about, but still, you get it. When he meets up with Blade later on, he has a new look. He was eventually bitten by a vampire, so he became their leader as well. The coolest part about Anthony is that he uses a Mark 1 Iron Man suit to get around during the day, so the sun doesn't, evaporate him or whatever. He captured and turned Smart Hulk into a bloodsucker, but his armor was stolen and used by Stick to fight back. Another Tony, another suit. Imagine you're in trouble and this guy rolls up on you. What a surprise that would be. Issue 16 of Ultimate Avengers opens with a great Twilight parody, but this is also the last time we see this Iron Man take flight. And that's because Hulk punched his head off, and usually when he does that, you don't come back, vampire or not. Number 9, Iron Lantern. From the Amalgam comic universe, Iron Lantern is of course a millionaire who is in charge of Stark Aircraft. While he's working on a flight simulator, it straight up took off and flew him somewhere else. Best simulator ever, if I do say so myself. Then he crash landed on the ground, injuring Stark, and he realized he was brought to a crashed alien spaceship. That spaceship belonged to none other than Roman Sur, who died before getting a chance to talk to Hal Stark. Not being in the best condition, obviously, after the rocky landing, Hal started working with his newfound tech on a new suit, hopefully to save his life. The Green Lantern upgrade of his suit saved his life for sure, but it also gave him the power to create anything out of green energy. He used a battery that reminded him of a lantern to do so. And then he went on to fight the aliens that had shot down Roman Sur and continued fighting enemies such as Madame Sapphire and Mandra Nesto, who, yes, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be great. It really helps us out here quite a bit. You're the best. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get right back into this list of weird Iron Mans. Number 8, Lord Iron. Coming from Marvel 1602, Lord Iron was amongst the other heroes who rose to fame, but a little bit back in time. See, Captain America was literally shot back in time, so the Age of Heroes has to begin there. And in turn, we get some fun versions of our Avengers. Anthony Stark was taken and held captive in the Holy Land during the English and Spanish War, a little different than the cave that he ended up with in our time. He was forced to make weapons still for them for weeks, mirroring Tony's origin in a fun, older way. David Banner was torturing him this time around though, so Anthony makes his own suit powered by lightning bottles, Okay? Now, it doesn't matter which timeline Tony ends up in, he's destined to be Iron Man one way or another.
Number 7. Earth 928 Iron Man. Earth 928 is widely accepted as the main continuity for Earth 2099. This is the same one that Miguel O'Hara, the main Miguel anyways, aka Spider-Man 2099, hails from. The sad reality is that in this continuity, there isn't really a future Iron Man to speak of. What we do learn about Tony Stark's future here is that the Doom of 2099 has dealt with Stark technology before, and that there is basically no alternate Iron Man within scanning distance of Flipside. Flipside appears in Spider-Man 2099, issue number 29, from the 90s, and appears to be scanning for copies of heroes of old so that it can basically copy their traits and abilities, adopting them to become a copy of them itself. Instead of running into any Earth 928 Iron Man though, Flipside ends up running into Miguel and becomes a copycat of Spider-Man 2099 instead. So like I said, as far as we know, there is no Iron Man 2099 in the main 2099 reality. There was a future for Tony, but we don't really know about it. We just know that he was there until he wasn't. Number 6. Stark Fujikawa. While Iron Man of Earth 928 appears to be dead, there is also the existence in this future of the Stark Fujikawa organization, one of the main corporations that rules over the future Earth, along with such powerful companies as Alchemax. While Tony Stark is not among the powerful heads of the company and is not the future CEO, presumed to be dead on Earth 928, in the alternate 2099 future reality of Earth 96099, Iron Man's likeness, at least, does live on. In this reality, Iron Man's likeness is used in advertising for the Stark Fujikawa organization, implying that Tony's future was somewhat tied to the company. At least, like I said, in this alternate 2099 reality, which isn't the main 2099 reality, but yeah, there are lots of alternate 2099 timelines. It's confusing. Although once again, we still don't really know the fate of Tony Stark even here, where his name and likeness still seem to reappear, but the rest is a mystery. Number 5. Iron Man 2099. There are actually multiple Iron Man 2099s out there, but one of the most well-known ones is Dr. Sonny Frisco, who first appeared in the 2015 Secret Wars event, making his very first appearance in Secret Wars 2099 issue number 1. While 2099 is a future reality that has been around for some time in the comics, Dr. Sonny Frisco wouldn't appear until later in its continuity. Or a continuity, really. This also, once again, is not the main 2099 continuity. In fact, the 2099 reality actually has multiple different continuities. As I said, it's a lot, it's confusing, but just stick with me here. Frisco's Iron Man hails from one of the fringe continuities known as Earth 23291. Sonny Frisco, however, would later become displaced to the reality of Earth 616, following the destruction and recreation of the multiverse as a result of the Secret Wars event. Like Tony Stark of Earth 616, Frisco is also a genius who built his own suit of armor and was a member of the 2099 Avengers, originally brought together by the CEO of Alchemax, Tyler Stone. At least, you know, in that alt 2099 reality. Number 4. MC2 Tony Stark. In the alternate reality of Earth 982, known as MC2, and not to be confused with the 2099 reality of Earth 928, even though those numbers are very similar, Iron Man ends up retiring. This Tony has a life similar to his 616 counterpart in most ways, with only a few differences between them. Namely, that Tony Stark in this reality decided to retire after an epic battle on an alternate Earth, which claimed the lives of many of his friends and fellow heroes, and left Scarlet Witch in a comatose state as a result of her sealing the portal between those two worlds. This devastating battle prompted Tony to retire, although he would seek out someone to carry on his legacy before doing so. Number 3. Mainframe. This is that legacy character for Tony Stark of the other main future reality for 616, known as MC2 Earth 982. Here in this reality, Tony Stark creates his own protege to carry on the Iron Man legacy, using his brain patterns or brain waves blended with an android modeled after his own armor. This android would be known as Mainframe. Mainframe was one of the original members of the MC2 Future Avengers team, editorially known as A-Next, after the name of the comic series that the team appeared in. Mainframe initially was much more by the book as a hero, pretty rigid in their ways. Over time, however, the android would learn to loosen up somewhat and even be considered a close friend to many of his heroic colleagues on the superhero team. Number 2. Andros Stark. Andros Stark is another Iron Man who hails from the 2099 reality. Not the main 2099 reality though. So many alternate timelines. This version of the alternate future Iron Man is actually Tony's grandson, Andros. Andros travels back in time in an attempt to stop his grandfather from creating Vortex. Vortex was initially created by Tony to protect humanity, but ended up turning on humankind instead, infecting the internet and threatening the existence of all human life on Earth in the future. However, in a strange twist, Andros actually ends up learning during his journey back to the past that it was his jaunt back in time that would actually result in the creation of the Vortex virus. The future crisis ends up being averted thanks to this revelation, but unfortunately it also causes Andros to cease to exist. At least this specific version of Andros who traveled back in time. There could very well still be an Andros out there somewhere in the world, one who, you know, didn't have a reason to travel back thanks to the future being saved. This future version of Iron Man 2099 does not appear in the comics, but instead is from the animated series Iron Man Armored Adventures. Number 1. Dr. Anthony Stark. Coming full circle now, from 10 to 1. As I said, what if Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark is not the only one out there? There's also the 2099 AD alternate future Tony Stark, who also ends up as Sorcerer Supreme, known as such or sometimes as Doctor Stranger or Dr. Anthony Stark. Although once again, although this is 2099 AD, this is not the main 2099 reality, this is another splintered continuity. This future version of Tony shows up in Infamous Iron Man when Dr. Doom, as the aforementioned infamous Iron Man, appears into the future. However, this future version of Tony would also appear initially in the 2014 all-new X-Men annual, where Tempest would run into him when she attempted to return to the reality where her husband and daughter existed. However, Stark would inform her that this reality no longer existed, and he would actually urge Tempest to return to her original timeline, the continuity of Earth 616.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Iron Goblin. Coming from an alternate universe where the Spider Island event wound up being permanent, Tony Stark was initially transformed into a human-spider hybrid under the control of the villainous Spider Queen. During a battle with the Resistance, however, Tony was sprayed with the same goblin formula that had corrupted the mind of Norman Osborn, transforming Tony Stark into the Iron Goblin, with a mechanical new costume to match. And while this version of Tony would eventually decide to sacrifice himself in a last moment of humanity before his goblin insanity fully took over, the combination of Iron Man and Green Goblin tech is still a pretty terrifying combo that Spider-Man should hope never reappears. Coming in at number 9, we have the corrupted Iron Man from the controversial 90s event, The Crossing. When a variant of the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror, known as Immortus, began using the neural link in the Iron Man suit to secretly begin altering Tony Stark's brainwaves, Iron Man became a sleeper agent within the Avengers and eventually attacked his companions outright after secretly manipulating them for years. While eventually defeated by a time-traveling 19-year-old version of himself, and then retconned into Tony going back to his usual status quo in the Marvel Universe, this controversial storyline shows what would happen if Iron Man truly turned out to be a traitor. Coming in at number 8, we have Iron Thor. During the event that saw God Emperor Doom in control of a Marvel universe converted into a new Battleworld, Doom maintained his complete control over the many realms of Battleworld with a police force army known as the Thor Corps. One of the most powerful of Doom's personal army was the being known as Iron Thor, wearing a combination of the Iron Man armor and Thor's iconic helmet, and investigating any potential rebellions to his master Doom's rule. Even capable of wielding Mjolnir, this super powerful character still managed to be murdered by the hero Warrior Woman as an example of rebellion against Emperor Doom. He might have had a short life, but man, I really love that Iron Thor design.
Number 7. Ultimate Iron Man. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be pretty much nigh unkillable. This was proven when the Master, Reed Richards, seemingly brought Tony's demise, but in actuality, he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual Iron Man abilities and capabilities. He's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suit, as well as open locks, defuse boom booms, and interact with all forms of tech. He eventually had his mind and body altered by an Infinity Gem to allow him to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man, like quite a few of the other Ultimate Universe characters, pretty ultimate. Number 6. Iron Goblin. The Spider Island story, taking place on the alternate Earth of Earth 1991, basically basically saw the city of New York taken over by the Spider Queen, who infected millions of people, including heroes, turning them into monstrous spider people. Agent Venom of the Resistance began using other monster transforming techniques to cure heroes of the spider monster virus. This includes injecting the Hulk with the lizard serum, using the God Stone to turn Captain America into a werewolf, and Captain Marvel was turned into a living vampire. For Iron Man though, he was sprayed with Norman Osborn's Goblin formula. This gave Tony Stark super strength, speed, stamina, durability, agility, reflexes, and a regenerative healing factor. But of course, this was combined with all the technology of the Iron Man suit. Unfortunately, the Goblin serum famously also has the side effect of making people maniacal, paranoid, irrational, and illogical. Not wanting to go fully insane though, and to make up for his crimes as an arms dealer, the Goblin Iron Man wielded the Ebony Blade and sacrificed himself to save the Resistance. It was actually very awesome. Number 5. Iron Hammer. In the 2018 Infinity Wars story, a warped together world was created by Gamora using the power of the Infinity Stones and Gauntlet. Essentially, Gamora folded the universe, and that molded souls with one another, creating amalgamated heroes. And for this spot, we're talking about the amalgamation of Iron Man and the God of Thunder, Thor. Stark, Odin's son, is an awesome version of Iron Man and Thor that enjoys virtual immortality thanks to his Asgardian physiology, along with superhuman strength and endurance. His hammer, Mjolnir Iron, which I know is a stupid name, has all the same powers as the regular Mjolnir, but it also grants Stark his armor, which is now a mystical suit of Asgardian armor. Since both Thor and Tony kind of have daddy issues, this version of the mix has their father, Howard Odin, playing a huge part in the story too. It's pretty damn awesome, and you should check it out. Number 4. Iron Maniac. Coming at us from the alternate Earth 5012, Iron Maniac shows readers what a totally evil version of Tony Stark would look like, other than the Exiles one and any other evil version, I guess. The Tony Stark from this war-torn version of the Marvel Universe has done some truly horrible things following the loss of so many of his fellow heroes at the hands of the villain Titanus. Using a really cool armor that also somewhat resembles Doctor Doom's armor, the Iron Maniac went against the Fantastic Four and even took the life of Johnny Blaze in his native universe. His advanced armor repels magical attacks as well as generates a neural dampening field that mitigates telepathic and telekinetic attacks to some degree, which really helped him out to be absolutely terrible. Reed Richards of Earth 5012 eventually found a way to send this Tony Stark to the 616 universe, where he faced the 616 Fantastic Four and eventually the New Avengers, showing just how powerful this evil Iron Man actually is and making us thank our stars that normal Tony Stark is a good guy. Number 3. Steel Corps. In Marvel's Age of X universe, the X-Men never existed to represent all the good that mutants can do, and as a result of that, the mutant population had become enemy number 1 to the human race. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led directly to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes organized by General Frank Castle and led by a much more unlikable Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. One member of this team was a version of Iron Man named Steel Corps. This Iron Man had become infected by a technological virus that fused him with his armor. Inside the armor, Iron Man has been slowly digested by the suit over the decades since he was trapped inside. The worst part is that this group of Avengers eventually decided that they aren't going to attack the mutants who are just trying to survive, so the government takes control of Steel Corps and forces the suit to attack. It's twisted, it's sick, and it's absolutely terrifying to imagine being slowly consumed by a suit of armor you can literally never leave and apparently cannot control. Number 2. Iron Lantern. The Amalgam Universe combined the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel Comics, during a time of utmost peace and prosperity. Just kidding, this was in the 90s. This crazy event pitted popular characters from both sides against each other and even fused some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, or Hal for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own and crashed at the site of another crashed alien spaceship. The crash of Hal Stark's craft left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which would have ended his life if he hadn't met the dying alien Roman Sur, and, using the suspiciously lantern-shaped alien battery, built a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive, but due to the advanced alien tech, it gave him the ability to create green, solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel, it granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers, translation of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever-classic superhuman strength and durability. Stark became one of the most overpowered heroes around, and an Iron Man Green Lantern combo was not something that I knew that I needed, but I'm glad I have it. And finally, in at number 1, it's Robert Downey Jr. Nothing can really stand up to the closest thing we got to a real Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark was the whole groundwork MCU, and his character endured for years, with aspects of his characterization even influencing comic Tony Stark to a degree. Taking aspects of the original character and adding some realism and a really likable performance made for a version of Iron Man that boosted up not only the comic book character's popularity, but through the MCU, it boosted up the popularity of comic books in general, and we will always celebrate that. Being in a world that is a bit more grounded and relatable to our own, this Iron Man doesn't have as complex of a story, nor is he more powerful, but he is more than impressive enough without that. Not to mention, he was the one to actually defeat Thanos in the end. His send-off from the MCU affected people who don't even read comic books, and I think that says a lot. And I can't read Iron Man in comics anymore without hearing Robert Downey Jr.'s voice. He is Iron Man. Coming in at number 10 is Iron Man the Traitor. In one of the first ever What If comics, we get an answer to the question of what if Iron Man was a traitor? It picks up following his usual origin story, with Iron Man being famously captured and forced to make the tools of his trade. Like normal, he still creates the Iron Man armor, but the change comes when instead of booting up and busting his way out, the boot up sequence takes just a bit too long, and Yinsen's sacrifice goes to waste as it doesn't buy Tony enough time like it normally would. Tony is found and restrained before he can do anything. Now that he has been found and this new weapon, the Iron Man armor, is discovered, the leader of the organization that had captured Tony, Chen Lu, plants a device in Tony's arc reactor that keeps Tony alive, but that allows Chen to shut it off remotely if Tony doesn't do what they say. Crucially though, Chen also implants a communication device in Tony's skull so that Chen Lu can spy on and control Tony. Then he lets him get discovered. Thanks to the fact that he can now control Tony, he forces him to become a hero like he would have anyways, gain the trust of the superhero community, and then learn secrets pertaining to S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony is ordered to dispatch Reed Richards and goes to complete this mission, but it's revealed that Tony has actually been recording an SOS tape by speaking incredibly slowly, and he sent that tape to Reed, who figured out he had to play it at a faster speed, and he learned of the situation that Iron Man was in. Once their fight began, Iron Man eventually got, quote, incapacitated by Reed, who in actuality helped remove the device inside of Tony's heart, giving Tony the chance to get his revenge. For a short and somewhat silly what if story, it's actually pretty good. Number 9. Lord Iron. Earth 311 is the home to the incredibly cool story of Marvel 1602. This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and adapts them to the Elizabethan era, and yes, that includes an Elizabethan Iron Man. Anthony Stark, aka Lord Iron, has an armor powered by literal lightning in a bottle. No, I ain't joking. His armor was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars and treated rather harshly by Robert David Banner, aka the Hulk of 1602. This resulted in Anthony requiring the suit to survive. But that's all backstory. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner at the Roanoke colony in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now look, this suit, in comparison to other versions of Iron Man, is not the most advanced and powerful suit, obviously, but it is centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with the first ever Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Elizabethan Iron Man literally captured lightning in a bottle, and that says all it has to, really. Number 8. Exiles. One of the most fun things about Tony is that Well, all you need is one story to take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Tony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality. When you do that, what you get is terrifying. That's a man who can bring the world to its knees but has the sense to not let them know it and then be begged to take charge. And that's exactly what happened with the Tony Stark of Earth 42777. This incredibly evil Iron Man concocted a massive plan. Tony acquired every world conglomerate, he organized a mutant war against humanity, and then defeated their leader, Magneto, who he secretly supported, in order to be held up as a savior. He created a worldwide famine the likes of which has never been seen before, and then invented the cures and vaccines to fix it. And all of that together got him elected president. He developed weather controlling technologies to cause biblical level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up control to Tony. Central America and our very own Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into Tony's control as well. Tony then made a deal with Dr. Doom, who then attacked the Capitol and took out all the other Democratic leaders in America. Then, Tony turned on him too, receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured as he took the life of the Latvian ruler. He's de-lifed the Hulk. This Tony appearing in Exiles issue number 23 is one of the coolest ones out there, but also one of the scariest.
Number 7. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is the evil twin brother of Antonio Stark, aka Iron Man, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Initially, Gregory Stark just seems like a better version of Tony. He's smarter, more focused, and is willing to cross lines in order to get a job done that Tony probably wouldn't cross. Sure, he's more morally ambiguous when it comes to his initiative, but on paper he's more morally conscious when it comes to his lifestyle. However, that of course lends well to him being revealed as a villain in the Ultimate Universe. While he never takes up the mantle of Iron Man, Gregory is Antonio's twin brother in this universe. He also employs nanotech like Tony does here and attempts to use it to defeat the Ultimates and Avengers, including his brother Tony. However, Tony ends up defeating his twin brother by sending out an EMP, which disrupts his tech, making him vulnerable to Thor's attack. Number 6. Iron Man 2099. Or one of the 2099 Iron Mans anyways. This version that we're talking about here hails from the animated series Iron Man Armored Adventures. He appeared in Season 2 in the episode titled Iron Man 2099. Here Andros is Iron Man 2099 and he goes to the past in an attempt to destroy Tony Stark. Why? Well, because in his future, Tony Stark, Andros' granddad, was actually responsible for bringing about the end of humanity's reign. He created an AI program built to help humanity called Vortex, but when Vortex got into the computers and escaped to check out the internet, it saw humanity as evil. I mean, if you judge us based on everything that's on the internet, I could definitely see it going that way. There's a lot of messed up stuff on the internet. Andros was the antagonist of the episode, but he thought he was actually saving the world by fighting against Tony and stopping him, when in reality he learned that Vortex was actually kind of created by Tony because of him. Time travel. It's trippy, man. In the end, Vortex is wiped from the future, and so is Andros. But at least Andros is kind of cool with it. He's like, at least Vortex is gone, so I'm good. Bye! Bye, grandfather. Who's now not my grandfather because I don't exist. I don't know, with my former grandfather. Time travel's weird. Number 5. The First Civil War. Well, you might think of Tony Stark from the First Civil War as main continuity Iron Man. He's also kind of an alternate at this point. While at the time we would consider Iron Man to be part of that main continuity, in modern day the version of Tony we have now had the events and basically the guilt of Civil War I basically wiped from his mind. Okay, let me explain. In part 1 we touched on the events of Axis and Superior Iron Man, which happened after the First Civil War. But before this mind wipe happened, it all went down because Norman Osborn had been given the reins for America's superhero team and operation, creating Hammer. To protect all the secrets that he knew, especially in regards to superheroes' names and their identities, because Civil War I happened, Tony decided to wipe his mind. This had the added bonus of basically erasing the events of Civil War I and his misdeeds from his psyche, meaning that he was no longer really the Tony that we knew from that time. The one who had decided to, you know, round up and imprison heroes who refused to register and ally themselves with him and the government. The one who inadvertently ruined Peter's life by encouraging him to join him and ultimately causing him to publicly unmask, which just ruined a lot of stuff in Spider-Man. Tony also ended up in a coma for a bit as a result of this mind wipe. But you know how comas work in comics, they're pretty much always temporary. And Tony was soon once more up and at 'em after having an earlier backup copy of himself rebooted into his mind, because you know, you can just make backup copies of your mind when you're a genius like Tony Stark. So don't worry, he had a plan for that in case that ever happened to him. Fortunately, it did happen, and so they could use the plan. Thanks, Pepper. Number 4. Arno Stark. Arno Stark is Tony Stark's evil brother. His evil brother from 616. Well, he's not always super evil, but he definitely has some questionable approaches when it comes to being Iron Man. He's like Tony, but with more questionable morals, I guess. Arno was actually the natural-born son of Howard and Maria Stark. Tony would learn about Arno and also find out that he was actually the adopted son of the couple. Arno first uses the mantle of Iron Man in 2019 in the 2018 series Tony Stark Iron Man in issue number 19. Arno as Iron Man ended up in a fight with Tony during the seeming robot revolution, believing that the only way to solve the issue of humans versus AI was to enslave the human population. It makes sense if you're following Arno through that story. Tony was forced to then stop his brother by trapping him in his virtual armor and placing him in a dreamlike virtual reality where he was seen as a hero. I'm sure that won't end up ending badly for Tony in years to come. Right? It's not like Donald Blake was living in a virtual reality where he was happy and then realized it was fake and then escaped and then tried to kill all the Thors or anything like that. That totally didn't happen, guys. Number 3. Infamous Iron Man. Maybe one of the most evil, but also somehow one of the best at the same time, was Infamous Iron Man. This was when Dr. Doom stepped up to the plate to replace Iron Man after his defeat in Civil War II, which of course left him in a comatose state. So many comas. 2 figures rose up to replace Tony at that time, one being Ironheart, aka Young Genius Riri Williams, and another being Dr. Doom, who became Infamous Iron Man. While Ironheart was more the heroic counterpart of the two, Doom also learned more and more about what becoming a hero entailed through his journey. And while he was ruthless as Iron Man, in the end he did kind of become a hero. However, this is still Dr. Doom we're talking about here, and eventually he left the mantle to return to Latveria and his life of villainous schemes and plots, back to the old status quo. And because this is still Dr. Doom underneath the armor, I think we can count him as an evil alternate. No. Number 2. Cancer vs. Iron Man. This version of Iron Man was also corrupted, though not by the controversial story arc of the 90s event The Crossing, but instead by the Many Angled Ones. He hails from the reality of Earth 10011. Here Iron Man became corrupted by the Cancerverse after Mar-Vell made a deal with the Many Angled Ones, which would cure him of his cancer. Death no longer existed in this reality, which did not bring about a paradise, but instead a hellish dimension. Iron Man became loyal to Mar-Vell, joining his Revengers team. It was Iron Man who also defeated Hulk in this reality, capturing Quasar, aka Wendell Vaughn, who had come to this reality from Earth 616, and had been attacked by the Hulk, which is why Iron Man had to be like, no Hulk, no, taking Quasar with me. Iron Man would join his fellow Revengers in their attempt to invade Earth 616, but in the end they would be defeated. Whew. Number 1. Darkhold Iron Man. One of the darkest versions of Iron Man to ever exist at this point in comics, who starts out as an optimistic inventor and quickly becomes overtaken by his own invention, twisted, driven insane till the point when he starts to harm others with the love of his own iron suit, comes from the Darkhold Iron Man comic. Here Iron Man builds his faded suit, but realizes too late that the suit is overzealous with its protection. It doesn't just seek to protect Tony while he's inside the suit, but seeks to protect him always by kinda keeping him inside the suit. The suit heals him from the inside, but removes his skin whenever he takes parts of the suit off. Tony believes the issue is that the suit thinks iron skin is better than human skin, and so it decides to remove it. However, after compulsively putting the whole defective suit on, including the helmet, it begins to dissolve Tony's skin and then his skull as well. He basically becomes fully bonded with and reliant on the suit. Driven insane, he believes everyone should have an iron suit, and attempts to have the whole world basically join him, including Happy, Jarvis, and his love interest and assistant in this story, Pepper Potts. It's really dark. Number 10. Lord Iron. Although by the end, the Iron Man of Earth 311, the 602 universe, becomes a hero, he spends a lot of time being a reluctant and at times kind of full-blown antagonist. Here, Tony Stark is known as Anthony Stark, or Lord Iron. He was forced to build weapons by his captors and needs an iron suit to survive, which is powered by lightning. He is initially at odds with the Hulk, who as David Banner showed great cruelty to Stark. As such, Lord Iron became more an agent of vengeance, obsessed with getting revenge on the Hulk. By the end of his story, however, he begrudgingly agreed to stop his quest for vengeance and forgave the Hulk for how he treated him before when he was simply David Banner. So it all works out in the end, but this figure was definitely a pretty dark and somewhat evil version of Iron Man to begin with. Number 9. The Stark. The Stark are like a whole alien race of alternate Tony Starks. They are a civilization that was literally shaped by Tony's tech after an alternate version of him decided to launch all his weapons and tech into space rather than let it fall into the hands of the evil Martians who were invading Earth at the time. Obviously, he didn't think very far ahead as to that plan, as all his tech crash landed on another alien planet where it was eventually discovered and utilized by the beings who lived there. They built their whole civilization around it, believing everyone on the planet should have their own suit of technologically advanced armor. This caused them to deplete their planet's resources and left it heavily polluted in the wake of their massive tech boom. Eventually, this drove them to ransacking and invading other planets for their resources, bringing about the same problems their own homeworld suffered to each new planet that they conquered. Note to self, don't just shoot your problems out into space. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about evil alternates, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Or if you want more Iron Man lists. I don't know, maybe you like Iron Man, you want more Iron Man lists, let us know. Number 8. Steel Corpse. Steel Corpse is a complex character who has moments of both heroism and villainy in Age of X. He exists on the Earth of 11326. Here Tony took the name Steel Corpse after being exposed to a virus, which permanently bonded him to his suit. Now dead within the suit, but able to move around because of being bonded to it, Tony made a darkly humorous joke calling himself the Steel Corpse, and the name just stuck. Pun not intended, but stuck, bonded. The villainous side of this dark hero comes from when he fought against the mutants with his fellow Avengers at Fortress X. However, it turned out that the Avengers were just somewhat misguided in their mission. Once they realized what they were doing was wrong, they attempted to help the mutants, although Steel Corpse was unable to make himself stop attacking. An emergency override stepped in to prevent Tony from fighting with the mutants, and so he asked Captain America to take him off the board in order to save the young mutants that his armor was threatening. Sad story. There's so many tragic Iron Mans actually. Top 10 tragic alternate versions of Iron Man is also something we could do.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Steel Corpse. Hailing from Earth 11326, this version of Iron Man was pretty similar to our own, but with two key differences. He's permanently fused with his suit, and he absolutely hates mutants. Fighting alongside other villainous Avengers to wipe out this universe's X-Men, this Iron Man's natural body died long ago after being melded with his machinery, and thus he jokingly calls himself the Steel Corpse as a way of coping with his morbid situation. This version of Iron Man had complete mastery of his weaponry, as they were literally a part of his body, and only a last-second change of heart before sacrificing himself stops this Tony Stark from being one of the absolute worst. Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous Iron Patriot, aka Norman Osborn. Best known as being the alter ego of Spider-Man's nemesis, the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn has long been one of the biggest threats in the Marvel Universe, manipulating events from afar as the CEO of Oscorp. Following the invasion of Earth by the Skrull army, Norman found himself suddenly in the public eye and with goodwill after being the one to personally defeat the Skrull Queen. Norman would use this influence to lead the Dark Avengers as the Iron Patriot, a twisted version of Iron Man combined with Captain America's patriotism that tricked the public into trusting Norman, and showing that Tony Stark is definitely not the worst billionaire in the Marvel world. Coming in at number 5, we have the Iron Maniac. On the dark alternate world of Earth 5012, most of the superheroes of this reality are dead after an unknown fatal error made by Reed Richards. A vengeful and violent Tony Stark makes it his life's mission to get revenge on Reed and modifies his armor to resemble that of Reed's worst enemy, Doctor Doom. This insane version of Iron Man killed the Human Torch and was eventually banished to the main Marvel universe, where he had to be subdued by the combined efforts of Spider-Man, Captain America, and Black Widow, who found it a bit unnerving to be fighting such a far-gone version of one of their closest allies. This Tony was just as resourceful as the real one, however, as he'd even escape custody by building a new suit from the remains of a life model decoy. Pretty resourceful for an insane Iron Man. Coming in at number 4, we have the superior Iron Man. During an event known as Axis, many Marvel heroes and villains had their morality completely inverted, with good guys becoming bad, bad guys becoming good, and so on and so forth. One of the few changes that wasn't reversed by the end of the event, however, was the morality of Iron Man, who in his evil form still possessed all of the intelligence and dark aspects of Tony's personality, and managed to build a shield for himself to prevent being turned into a hero again. Infecting much of the planet with a new version of the Extremis virus, and using artificially intelligent drones to assert his dominance, this version of Tony was only finally cured by the Marvel Universe's collapse into Battleworld resetting his morals, meaning that this was a villain that the rest of the Avengers didn't even manage to properly defeat. Coming in at number 3, we have Obadiah Stane, aka the Ironmonger in the very first Iron Man film. It's become a bit of a meme at this point that many of the supervillains of the MCU are dark reflections of the same powers and personalities as the heroes they're opposing, and the Ironmonger is the origin of that trope in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Completely guilt-free about selling weapons to all sides, Stane is a ruthless businessman willing to do anything to maintain control of Stark Industries, and shows just how awful Tony's new technology could be used in the wrong hands, and what a monster he could become if he gave up on his deepest morals. Although, honestly, the fact that his idea of upgrading the Iron Man suit is just to make the original one bigger, maybe he's not quite as smart as Tony after all. Coming in at number 2, we have the evil Emperor Stark. Hailing from the destroyed world of Earth 42777, this version of Iron Man was perhaps the cruelest the multiverse had ever seen, as he manipulated Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants into declaring war on humanity, then used the resulting anti-mutant backlash to secure power as the world's only superhero. Holding entire countries hostage with natural disasters and even spreading plagues among his own citizens, this version of Tony declared himself Emperor Stark, taking the cloak of Doctor Doom as a final trophy. This was Iron Man at his most evil, and he was an incredibly powerful threat when encountered by the multiverse-traveling Exiles, only eventually defeated by his own universe's last superhero survivor, Sue Storm. A tragic end for a tragic villain. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Zombie Iron Man. When Earth 2149 was first hit by the zombie plague that's since been highlighted in multiple Marvel spin-off series, this version of Iron Man attempted to use teleportation technology to escape to a different universe with Nick Fury. However, a zombified Fantastic Four arrived too quickly for this plan, and Tony was bitten, becoming a living corpse inside his metal armor and developing a bloodlust and pure hunger for human flesh. Still surviving even after having his legs blasted off by the Silver Surfer, the zombified Iron Man would go on to lead the rest of the undead heroes and villains in an attack against Galactus and gain this universe's power cosmic, meaning he could now pursue more flesh throughout the entire universe and bring the zombie plague to the rest of the doomed cosmos.